Hello, welcome to IPDay's Tech Tuesday. Today we are looking at Google Apps to reach more learners, and we just want to meet our learners right where they're at. My name is Kate Redman. I'm the CEO and founder of Light and Salt Learning, and have been working with IPDAY for some few months now. Been super fun. I actually was in the lovely state of Florida at the beginning of the month, and we had a lot of good fun in Avon Park and in Naples. And I'm happy to be with you guys here today. Again, as if you've been here before, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put it in the Q&A. You could also put it in the chat. We have people monitoring the chat. Your microphones are going to be muted, so you're in listen only mode. Fair warning, sometimes I just ask you guys to unmute and answer questions for me. We'll see how it goes today. Depends how many of you there are. But we are recording the presentation itself. It's going to be archived and be available on the IPDAY website within the next 48 hours. And the slideshow is already there. I'm going to show you so much today, way more than you could ever remember. So important to know how to access that information. So again, all the links are going to be in the slideshow, and you're going to be able to, you could get that slideshow now if you wanted to from the archives on the website. All right. So our goals today, we're going to be utilizing some Google Apps and some extensions to better serve a wide variety of adult education students. And then hopefully we're going to get some time to collaborate to identify some specific tools and how you can use them specifically. Like I said, we're going to have a lot today. It's going to be a very bird's eye view, so kind of like your College 100 class, because honestly, a ton of these things we're going to be looking at, I could spend an entire hour on. And so I'll give you guys a little bit of time to play with some of the specifics. And our agenda is first, we're going to talk about UDL, Universal Design for Learning. We're going to talk about some Google Apps that we can use to promote UDL, to incorporate UDL into our classroom. And then we have a treat. If you've not looked at Chrome extensions, there's so many great ones that can help both you and your students. All right, well, let's go. Actually, let me pull up my chat so if you're talking to me, I can see. All right. All right, so let's talk universal design for learning. So, depending on how long you've been in education, you've probably heard this term before. It is been around, and it has been a push in adult education for at least the last decade. But the idea here is that, our students are individuals. Any classroom is full of students with a variety of needs, but I would say of all the places I've taught, the adult education classroom is definitely got the biggest variety of students with different skill levels, different learning preferences, needs, primary languages, life circumstances. I mean, my goodness, our students are all over the place. And so sometimes we can spend way too much time kind of reacting to those needs, scrambling to meet needs as they arise. If you're familiar, for example, with a K-12 model of education, I know a lot of our educators do K-12 during the days and teach adult ed at night. We'll have IEPs. We have to make certain accommodations for students. Well, the idea of universal design for learning is being proactive rather than reacting to students' needs. We build intentionally into our classrooms a lot of the tools you might need or the strategies you might use so they're there right from the very start, and any student could use them. They don't need to have an IEP. And so that is known as universal design for learning. And the research shows that that is indeed the best practice. If we can just normalize having these tools and you don't even have to call them accommodations anymore because they're available for all students. But if we can normalize having these things in place and using these things in our classroom, we're going to create proactive students who use the tools that they like, and they're not dependent on others providing them for them. So, what is universal design for learning specifically? Well, the experts on this Our CAST is the organization. They're the Center for Applied Special Technology, and they define it as a framework to improve and optimize teaching and learning based on what we know about the human brain. And then the goal of UDL is just that all learners can access and participate in meaningful, challenging learning opportunities. So I'm going to guess that you guys can all agree that that is what you want for your students. So the thing is, our learners vary, it's true, but the types of needs that we're going to see are fairly predictable. And that's what makes this UDL concept possible. So CAST organizes these needs into three categories. The first category is the engagement, the why. So when I say the why, I'm talking about why learners choose to engage with the material, what gets them interested. And so you can pop it in the chat if you think about it, but our students kind of vary. Sometimes you get that attitude of, why do I have to learn this? What is this even for? And so different students get interested in material in different ways. So if you have some input on this, love for you to put it in the chat. But what are some different ways our students get interested? Well, for a lot of our students, I've noticed it's real world applications. They want to know, how is this really going to relate to my life? Um, or it's relating it to something they already know from before, maybe some interests that they have in the future. And I have a lot of students who are like, if I can't see a practical use for this, I cannot remember it. So that idea that is that here that different students have different whys. And so the more whys, the more ways to get engaged that you can include, the better. Yeah, Javier says you never know when you will need everything you are learning. That's true. And we can point that out to them. But we do also want to have a lot of different ways that we can get them engaged. And we're going to look at different ones, but get them engaged at the beginning of class. So that's the idea here. Real world connection is a huge one in adult education. We have practical students a lot of the time. Um, so the second category that Cass talks about having this universal design for learning is representation. And I think this is the one we usually think about when we think about making accommodations or we think about UDL. So this is just how you get the information. So obviously, you know, a traditional method is to have those lectures with those PowerPoints. That's how we're giving them information, but certainly that's not the only way. You know, we have readings and we have videos, so there's that, just like the type of format of information, but there's a lot more than that. You know, we can talk about font size, we can talk about the actual font, the color of the screen. I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into this representation. And then finally, the third category is actions and expressions, the how of learning. So this is not how the students take it in now. This is how the students interact with what they're learning and then put it out. So we're talking about the practice and then that exhibition of mastery of learning. So certainly there's a lot of focus in a lot of our classrooms about tests because, like it or not, our students have tests to pass, whether it's dealing with our pre and post testing. We want to see them make progress on those, whether it's passing the GED. That's certainly one way, but that is not the only way that our students can express what they've learned and kind of show us that they've mastered. So the main idea here is that you want to have a variety of ways that students can engage in these three different areas: engagement, representation, and actions and expressions. Awesome. And so what are we going to do in order to be able to do that? Options, options. And by the way, you guys, adult education is the perfect place to provide options because sometimes we don't give our adults enough self-efficacy in the classroom or self-control in the classroom. They need to be able to be in control of a lot of their learning in order for us to keep them, really, but for them to be successful learners. So if you haven't seen this before, this is a beautiful chart. This is just a little excerpt from the CAST website. This is actually a older version of their graphic organizer, but it's the one that I liked best. So this is the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines. So you're going to see in these columns here, and you don't need to read all of these, okay? You can go look at the website later if you want to check it out. I have it linked here. But you're going to notice that these columns here, those are exactly the categories we talked about. We want those multiple means of engagement, those multiple means of representation, and those multiple means of action and expression built into our classroom. But then they further categorized and broke it down with these rows here. So we're looking at accessing information, how that happens in each of those categories, supporting, and so that's like scaffolding, not just how to get the information, but how you can support them. And that's really important with a lot of our learners because they have high level goals, but sometimes they have low level skills. So with that scaffolding, we can help students engage with high level content they need to be engaged with, even if maybe they have a lot of gaps in their skills. And then the final one is executive function. Um, I assume a lot of the times, and maybe I shouldn't because I engage a lot of the time with adults with disabilities, that everybody knows what executive function is. Real quick in the chat, are you familiar with the term executive function? Do you know what this is about when we talk about executive function? It's something I talk about a lot because I have ADHD and bipolar. Okay, we already have a no, so I'm going to explain it. So, executive function are kind of all those metacognition skills, those wraparound skills that you would use as a learner. So it's not like being dyslexic, accessing the material that way. It's all the ideas of being able to like start a task, chunk a task into manageable pieces, schedule yourself, get started, just give yourself the motivation to get started, stay on task, focus. I mean, this is a huge issue for students with ADHD, which we know a lot of students will say that they have, but it's also a huge issue for any students who have any kind of a trauma that's affecting their learning. And so executive function is huge. And so it shows up a lot in the adult education classroom. So that's what we're looking at there. And it can affect all of these things: engagement, representation, action, and expression. Lovely. Okay. You guys, I've been sick for 3 days. I've lost my voice twice. So I'm trying my best. Okay, but I might have to stop to drink a little bit. Okay, so first I want to just start with Google Apps. So these are the things that maybe you've heard about, but I want to show you some cool features that maybe you haven't seen before. And it was really fun doing this for you because I've been doing this for a long time. In 2018, had the pleasure of being part of a small team of adult educators in Arizona that got to do a year-long training on assistive technology to help students with various disabilities. And we looked at all these things during then. Well, there's so much new stuff that I found um, since 2018. And of course, they're developing new things all the time. So we're just going to look first at the basics of the Google Suite. All right, so what are the classic apps? Most of us know about this. The first one is Google Drive. I would really um, encourage you to use this with your classmates or with your classes. I have had so much fun helping my students to organize, yes, for sure, but also collaborate. We can have student folders. We can have a folder for math, a folder where people are putting up their work, they're putting up videos. We have the slideshows already there. Um, I've used it to share with other teachers. It's a great tool for collaboration, and you know, a lot of our students are not going to be able to afford the Microsoft Suite, so we love that Google's free. Within Google Drive and within the Google Suite, we see students being able to do docs. So that's like Word. They can do word processing there. And honestly, it has just about every function that they would need in Word. At least, you know, the higher level functions, most of the time, most people are not using. And docs is just rich. It has so much in it. And of course, it has slides for presentations and sheets for spreadsheets like Excel. Google Calendar is a wonderful tool. You can create a Google Calendar for your class, invite all your students, and then they can see their work and then it'll show up on their personal calendar. They can add to it. And by the way, guys, do this. This is really fun. So I told you executive function is a big one for our students. It's also a big one for me personally in my life, just because both disabilities that I have, plus my own trauma, means that I have a lot of issues with executive function. It's probably my hardest thing, which is why I have so much fun teaching about it. But man, do I rely on my calendar so bad. If I didn't have my calendar, I don't think I'd be able to do the jobs that I do at all. And so many of our students, I mean, the most common thing I hear is, Miss, I have ADHD, I have ADHD, I have ADHD. And I'll ask my students, do you use a calendar? Oh, no. Well, no wonder you're not doing your homework. You're never showing up on time. You're missing class. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it without a calendar. So now maybe you say, I know about calendars. My students know about calendars. Remember, the idea is to normalize these things into your class. So how do you incorporate them into your class in order that your students are then empowered to use them in their own lives? So again, that classroom calendar is a great way there. Okay, so let's get a little um, in depth here with Google Docs. We're going to do a little bit of a tour. So like I said to you, we could do a full webinar on every one of these things. Like we could look at accessibility and differentiation using Google Docs for an hour. So I'm going to give you a big bird's eye view, but I made this lovely Google Doc for you guys. So if you go get the slideshow, these things will be linked for you too. So you will be able to go where I'm going here. Whoops. There we go. But I just pulled out some highlights of tools that are really good to use to help more students access what you're doing in your classroom. So, first big one, and I don't even have it listed, of course, I'm sure you guys know, is that Zoom, right? Being able to change the size of the screen. And you go, easy. Your students don't know it's there necessarily. They don't know that they have the command minus, the command plus to blow up the size of the screen. I would definitely teach them that, of course we're dealing with those vision issues. So can I dial it back just a second? Sorry, I probably should have said this before. Anything you do in your classroom, any handouts you pass out, any paper copy should also be available to your students online so they can use these accommodations as they work. So it's fine to have a paper copy, but also have a way that they can access it, whether it's from their phone or other devices in your classroom, so that they can use these tools. Again, it's just normalized. Students have those options. So anyway, looking at Google Docs. Um, I blew up the screen here. I came through and I showed you so many great things for your students to use in each one of the menus. But like I said, since we have limited time, I want to show you a few goodies. Okay, so great one, of course, if you don't know about it, we'll start with the real basics, is to suggest edits. That way, the things you write can show up there as corrections, and your students can accept or reject corrections. A great way to work on their essays and such. You guys, if you're still using the red pen from hand, by hand, that's no fun. I'm trying to undo what I did. Okay. Another ones that I definitely wanted to make sure that I pointed out were, hopefully you guys know this, but we can change the language, right? Half of us are dealing with students speaking other languages. It's really fun. In my particular school, I often help, even though I'm a GED teacher, I'll help with orientations for Ella. Well, the language thing can be an issue. We never know, which languages are going to show up for orientation. So I have definitely been known to use these language tools. Where is it? I want to find it for you. Why am I not finding it? Oh, you guys, really? Oh, there it is. I don't know why it's blacked out. Oh, because I don't have it highlighted. Hello, Kate. So, file. No, for some reason my language is turned off. I'm not sure what's going on, you guys. I've used it many times in the past. If anybody's smarter than me and knows why I'm messing it up online, you let me know. But you can also use Google Translate. Certainly, it's not only within Google Docs to use the language feature, but I've taken the orientation rules for the classroom and translated it into every language that I have in front of me before. So as we go over the rules in English, they're actually able to read it in their own language. So that's where I was going with that. Okay. Um, Inserting comments is great. I also wanted you guys to see that you can view that equation toolbar. So if we go to view and show equation toolbar, our students have trouble inserting equations. And so, or they have trouble with math, I should say, a lot of the times, like being able to speak it, being able to read it. And so a lot of teachers I've seen will just, I don't like use the standard typing like that in the document. We don't like, for example, here's a great example. One half. If you have a student who has dyscalculia and you use one half with the um, diagonal fraction bar instead of the horizontal fraction bar, you're actually going to see students with dyscalculia do more of the inverting and the flipping. It makes it harder. So you always want to make sure your fractions are in the style that we would use in a math class, like 1/2. Thank you, Jennifer. You guys, if you need to know how to use the language tool, Jennifer dropped it in chat. She uses tools and then translate document. Um, but anyway, it would be important to know how to insert an equation if you're going to write these math equations, whether it's your students typing or you typing. So I know, for example, if you're teaching an online class, your students would need to know how to do it too. So I'm just going to go to insert here and insert an equation. And then now using that toolbar that we put out, now we can actually use and type it the way that a mathematician would type it instead of having that one half there. So really important for anybody who's typing up anything in math that you type it the way that it would be typed in traditional mathematical format. So it also makes it readable by screen readers, by the way, that they can read it as a math speech. Okay, I better hurry up. This isn't even what I wanted to highlight. I got a little off of it. Okay, there's what I wanted to highlight. So again, I showed you a bunch of stuff in the insert menu. We can insert images. There's me. But we can insert tables, drawings. Look at that. Charts. Are you having your students make charts and graphs? This is a quick way to do it as we look at analyzing data, right? Our students need to be experts at charts and graphs. But I really liked these smart chips. This was one of the new things that I started playing with. So if you go to insert and then smart chips, it's kind of fun. We can put in the date, we can put in a certain date that's then clickable. So for example, if you were making, say, you had a homework assignment for your students that was in Google Word, or I mean in Google Docs within the class, you could put the due date on it and then they would be able to click right here to see on their calendar everything it's about and be able to go to their calendar. You can put in email addresses, all these clickable links, insert other documents into it, even maps. So I had fun. This is where I flew out of, you guys, when I was in Florida. So I was having so much fun using the chips here. And you can also just do it as a placeholder. So if you want your students to drop a date for themselves, or they're tagging their group members, or putting up a file for you within a shared document, you can just put the placeholders here, and then your students just click it and pick which thing they want to upload there. So for example, file, and we can put a document right in there. Hold on 1 second. Undo. Okay, wonderful. Um, what's another good one we need to know? Oh, the building blocks. So again, under insert, building blocks, also super fun. This was a good one. I liked the meeting notes under um, building blocks. Oh, I know why it's not working. I'm in the wrong account. Hold on momentarily. Okay, lovely. So features differ depending on what type of account you have. But I loved the meeting notes one because I was able to go ahead, hit insert, and then when I went to that building block and did meeting notes, picking, you could pick the particular class, but I picked my IP Day materials due meeting, and then it automatically put up the date, the title of the meeting, and so it could be their class, and then they could type in their notes there, put their action items of, for example, what homework they needed to do. And again, so we talked about executive function being a big issue with our students. This is a great one because, our students, oh my gosh, I've tried to do binders. I don't know how many of you guys have tried to do binders where my students keep things in order and organize things by class, and it's just a nightmare. They're not really great at it. So this would automatically, if they took notes this way, organize their class notes. So anyway, I'm not going to go through everything it can do. Again, you're going to be able to see all of these things I put in for you. But one more thing I wanted to show you. Did you guys notice these little blue numbers along the edge? You ever make a reading for your students and then it's like, oh, I want you to look at this part of the reading. I want you to look at that part of the reading. Well, you can certainly use the tool to do the line items. So this one's under tools, which I put here for you. Get to the tools menu. So if you go under tools, there's the translate that we were talking about, but we have line numbers. So tools, line numbers, and I can make the entire document have these line numbers so they can easily find the line that we're referring to. All right. Enough of Google Docs. Let's go on. All right. So within Google Sheets, I won't take as long because Google Sheets has a lot of the same features as Google Docs. But some fun things that I did want to show you um, are definitely we should use these Google Sheets to do the insert charts. Whether it's sorry, I have to move everything out of the way, you guys. I have all my Zoom windows in the way. I would spend all this time. Why is this not moving? There it goes. I would spend all this time creating charts and graphs and all of this. And it's so nice. It can automatically happen in Google Sheets. So you can have your students, for example, I have an activity in my class that I do as an icebreaker with my students on the very first day of class where we gather class data and then we use that data in various ways throughout the year. We'll do data analysis with it, we'll do charts and graphs with it, all kinds of fun stuff. But I can highlight certain parts of my chart, my table here, and then I can insert a charter graph. So if you're not doing that, you totally should. And you can pick what type of charter graph you'd like. And I love this because one of the activities that I'll often do with my students is comparing different visual representations of the same data to really dig down with them and ask them, well, which one do you think is the best representation of this data and why? And so that would be a great activity here, really quickly done, and build those kind of deep reasoning skills that our students need. So I also wanted to show you if you are using Google yourself, Gemini is so helpful, especially if you have a business account or your school has a Google-based school account for you. I literally asked Gemini to make me a table of events from the civil rights period of American history. Think about how useful that is for social studies. And it did this for me in 3 seconds. And then I was able to use that for inserting a timeline. Again, we need our students to be able to read graphs. That can be really challenging, or even making charts and graphs and visuals. And so you can literally insert a timeline and use this data here And now we have a timeline of events in US history. What a cool um, thing to be able to use to give your students who are maybe they're lost in a reading. They're really having trouble picking up the main idea. We can really quickly list some events and then put it in a timeline to get that lovely visual representation of what's going on. Cool. Um, what else did I want to tell you? I think that's about it for Google. I know I'm going fast, you guys, so if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Again, really big bird's eye view here. Oh, and I'm 4 minutes off. I better hurry. Okay. Okay. Now, we've talked, these are kind of accommodations. These are kind of nice tools for you to quickly be able to make visuals. But let's look at a way that I use one particular tool to make accommodations in my class. So. So we looked at Google Docs, we looked at Google Sheets, which has a million of things, but I love using Google Slides. I use Google Slides a lot with my students, whether it's online or in person for collaborative activities. So certainly this is not the only one that you could do, but I'm going to show you one of mine. And this will be linked here. This particular document, it's linked for you. If you get the slideshow, you can copy it and use it with your own classrooms if you like, because this is adapted from one of my classroom activities. But this is an online activity that I use with my students. And like I said, I'll use it with an online class or I'll use it with an in-person class because I do a lot of in-person classes where everyone has a device. So this particular one is just a little review of some mathematical basics my students need to use. But what I do is I do reviews in parallel tasks. So the nice thing is I've got this set, and this is what you'll need to do if you want to collaborate and Google anything, whether it's Google Docs, Google Slides, any Google tool. You need to make sure that when you share this, you make it so that anyone with the link can edit something, and then your students will be able to collaborate on it. But since I don't want you guys to change it right now, I'm going to just make it so that anyone with the link can view it. So if you make a copy of this to use it with your own students, do make sure that you make sure your copy is editable by anyone with the link. All right, that was just my little preface. Okay, so there's some directions for use if you want to use it yourself. But take a look at this activity. So I do have this opening slide for my students just so they can practice because any student who clicks into this is able to write on it. So I might have a student writing here, another writing there, and I have all my students writing at the same time. And so we're just practicing on the first slide to make sure they know how to use it. But once we do that, you can see that I will differentiate my tasks. So take a look at this. This is a task that any student could do. Translate an algebraic expression into words. From the very first day of class, I'm teaching my students these types of skills. But obviously, not every student is going to do this at the same level. And so what I'll do is I'll have various questions and I just tell my students to choose one so that everybody can participate, but we're participating at different levels. So it's a great way to differentiate. And it's also a great way for students to build on each other's answers. I have these kind of open-ended questions. And so the more that they see populated, those pondering students can get more and more and more examples from their classmates, be able to build on it. And so it gives our students a lot of choice. We're differentiating, we're building. And then another thing I do is, you know how your students will, one finishes fast and another 5 minutes later is still thinking about it. So I love to, in my notes here, put a follow-up question for students to ponder on, and they can write on it, or you can have them write right in the comments, and they can give you some feedback there. And so those zippy students can continue. They're not just bored while other students think. So that's one of the ways that I'll use Google Slides for collaboration. Love it that way. Started doing this during COVID because I did not want my online classes to not be interactive. If you come to this final slide here, I did look at some other Google Slide features that I love. Here's one I'd love to highlight. So under File, if you go to Print Preview, and sometimes this takes a little while, and go to Handout 3 Slides, You get an automatic, easy guided notes thing. So a lot of one of those executive function issues that a lot of students have is how do I take notes? You're going to hear if you ask your students about it, a lot of GED students, a lot of adult education students will tell you, I can't take notes and listen. Which do you want me to do? Do you want me to listen or do you want me to take notes? And so by providing them guided notes, printouts of the slides with areas to write, then they can more easily keep up and just write down important points or highlight things. And so that's a quick, easy way to make guided notes. All right, lovely. And mm, I think I think that's all we need to highlight on that. 10:35. Oh my goodness, we're doing so good. All right, I'm going to check the chat real quick to see if I missed anything, guys. Oh, Pamela Joe, I'm so glad you said this. Let me point this out. So Pamela Joe said slides can be used like Jamboard. I love it. Very nice. That is so true, Pamela Joe. That's exactly what I did with one of the activities I did. So if any of you guys ever use Jamboard, it has gone away. We are all in mourning who use Jamboard. So Google Slides is a great alternative for those activities, those kind of like interactive online activities. Great. Okay, lovely. So those aren't the other, I mean, we talked about the most basic Google apps, but there's so many more. So another great one, if you don't know about it, you can use Classroom, Sites, or Bloggers as an LMS. Remember, I told you, you have got to, if you're going to have a class that has universal design for learning, you have got to have everything stored in a digital format. You just do. The days of printouts and packets in adult education are gone. And we don't want them anyway, alone. I should say alone. There's nothing wrong with a printout, guys, but there should also be a digital copy, is what I'm saying. Because they're only accessible to a narrower range of students. So if we also have a digital copy, now we're upping our accessibility just by doing that in so many ways. And so a lot of programs will tell me, well, we don't have an LMS, a learning management system. Some people, you're part of your organization, like your college, will provide access to one. Like some people use Canvas or Blackboard. But if you don't have access to one, you can certainly use Google Classroom or Google Sites to throw up a quick LMS. I've done both. And you can also use Google Blogger, but I actually use Blogger for a different purpose. Pardon me, hold on. Okay. So we do a class blog where we do our writing contests every year during the literacy week. Adult Education Literacy Week, we would always do a writing competition in my classes. And so that way we're able to publish student work, evaluate each other's work, and made a great tool, that the blogger. So great way to use Google for free. Okay. Obviously, a huge issue with especially online classes is getting our students to connect. We really want our students to form those cohorts, as you know, if we're going to increase our impact, if we're going to increase their learning, we need that social piece of learning. And so there's a lot of Google tools you can use for that: Meet, Chat, Connect, Groups. Google Forms can be used to assess and poll. I love making things that are self-grading, so my students have instant feedback. Google Forms can be used for that. This was a new discovery for me. I don't know how many of you guys know about this, but did you know that Google has Google Books? It's a searchable database of free, accessible books that they don't have to buy. One of the things that I do with my students, right from the first day of instruction, I have my printouts of everybody's. We use the TABE for our pretest. I'm not sure I think you guys use CASAs, right, for your pretest. But either way, I use my pretest in order to help students assess their reading level, and I want them doing daily reading. Well, a lot of our students have never read before. They don't have a lot of access to books. And so I just think, oh, it would be a cool addition to what I do with them to be able to just open up Google Books and try to find something right there that they'd be interested in, that they have immediate access to instead of asking them to go to a library, take another step outside of my classroom. Then, of course, Google Gemini is a lovely new tool. I know it has its limitations, but it's also useful in a lot of ways. Oh, I'll give you an example. Here's an example of a way that I used Google Gemini in my classroom the other day to differentiate. I had a student, really bright student, mind you, um, really high skill level, but I could not get her to pick out the main idea and the supporting detail of an article. So hard. And so I was trying to teach her that you can use the basic typical structure of an essay to give you big clues about where you might find the main idea, where you might find the supporting detail, just based on like the standard structure of a 5 paragraph essay. But she was just really struggling. And so I asked Google Gemini, I said, give me a 5 paragraph essay, split it into individual sentences, and then mix them up. And so I cut out these sentence strips and we organized it the standard way. And I had her organize it the standard way and able to practice, oh, the topic sentence is the main idea. And then detail, detail, detail. Topic sentence, detail, detail, detail. And then she was able to get this better handle there as she physically played with it of where we usually find that main idea and where we usually find that supporting detail, and that physical moving it around clicked in a way that me pointing it out in an article over and over again just hadn't. And so Gemini helped me do that in minutes. I was able to get 3 or 4 of those done, and she practiced a few times and she was good. I loved Google Finance. I thought that was super interesting. Thought about how one of the skills on the social studies test, which by the way, after math, social studies is the test with the lowest pass rate of the reading-based tests in social studies. This is the one that the most students struggle with. Well, it has economics on it, which is challenging for students, like looking at the data analysis in there and charts and graphs in there. And so I thought Google Finance could be really fun to look at those math skills in real world context. There's a lot of good things in there, charts and graphs, percents. And then Google Arts and Culture, this one was new to me too. Super fun. A lot of reading comprehension, being able to interpret diagrams, but a lot of history and current events. You could take tours of historical sites. I mean, just some cool stuff in there. And then, of course, Google Maps and Google Earth can be used as well. Use that frequently because I want my students to have have basic map reading skills for the test. All right. How are we doing? 10:42, you guys. Oh, I'm only 7 minutes behind. Okay. Now, whew, I've been talking and talking. Let's have you play a little bit. So I want to build a UDA Google Tool Bank. This is our UDL. This is going to give you guys an opportunity to engage a little bit with what we've been saying to process all the tons of information I've just given you. Okay, so our goal here is to share uses of Google Apps to promote universal design for learning in the adult education classroom. What we're going to do is I'm going to have everybody navigate to this Google Sheet. We are going to collaborate in real time on a Google Sheet, just the way I do with my students. If Joe or Nicole, you can drop this link in the chat. I would love this for the activity. I'm also going to put up a QR code so you can access it. But we're going to think about the new Google Apps, or maybe just the features of Google Apps you already knew that you learned about today. And I want you to just think, I know I gave you a lot, but how about 1 or 2? How could you use that particular feature to improve class design to reach more students? All right. And I'm going to have you briefly describe your idea in one of the 9 categories. Okay. And again, I want you to use Google Collaboration etiquette. I shouldn't say again, I didn't say this before, but make sure basically Google collaboration etiquette means I'm not going to come in a space that's already occupied by anonymous dingo. I'll come in another space and type. So what you're going to notice about this Google Sheet that we're in, and if you haven't managed to navigate there yet, there's the QR code on the side and the link on the side as well. And it's also should be in the chat now. But you're going to come here and you're going to see it's organized the same way that graphic organizer from CAST was organized. So we have 3 ways that we need to provide options for students, options to engage, options to increase access, and options to build and demonstrate mastery. And then we had categorized those further as areas of access, areas of building, and areas of internalizing information. And so, if you're not sure, I've given you some hows here. But for example, in this one, if I wanted a student to have more ways to perceive information, um, I would want to increase students' ability to manipulate information and all of that. And so my idea here is that you just come in and you write an example from what we've learned today. So here's my example. I could use text to speak Chrome extensions to help students who maybe have trouble reading the written word to better understand what they read using text to speech. All right, so I'm going to let you guys type in here. Take a few minutes. Whew, and let's start filling this in. And I will open up these things so we have more rows since there's a lot of you. And I don't care what box you go in, don't worry about that. Just if you thought of something, if anything caught your attention in what we learned on, give me an example of how you might use that in your classroom. And if you have any questions about what we're doing, please write it in the chat so I can answer them. All right, go for it, you guys. Where do we have? I see only one person participating. Oh no, three. Yay! Is anybody struggling? Mm. Jennifer, yeah, you use the slides interactive feature for your in-person and online lessons. Yeah. One of the things I like to use slides for, our students. Oh, nice, Elvana. I know if you don't have it on your phone, sometimes it's a pain. You have to download the app on your phone. I get it. If you guys want to type it in the chat, you just need to tell me which box it belongs in. I'm happy to type it in for you too. But what was I saying? Oh, when I'm trying to work on reading comprehension with my students, I'm just going to keep talking while you guys are doing this. Um, I have an activity where I take a short story that I'm having my students read, and I just basically break it into strips, like little blurbs from the story, and put it on a Google slide, and then have my students find images for it. I'm trying to get them to practice visualizing information. They blow through readings without visualizing, and that's such an important key to understanding what they do. But anyway, it's a fun use of Google Slides. It's basically like we make a picture book for a short story, and then my students better engage with it. Using sheets to organize vocab words, use a timeline to keep students on track. I love that. I only thought of using it for social studies. Nice. Mm. Okay. So I see use for students who miss class and need to catch up on work. Which app are you talking about? So clearly my directions were not that clear. Was it Google Classroom? Was it Google Calendar? Maybe Google Classroom? So which Google app would you use and for what purpose? Google Classroom. All right, thank you. Oh, just another thing, if you're collaborating, by the way, in Google, you'll find students who don't usually interact will interact because of this anonymous feature. And certainly Google is not the only way to do that. But oh my goodness. Okay, guys. I think I just really want to quickly be able to show you some extensions too. So certainly you can leave this up and think about it, but let me navigate back to the webinar so that I don't miss out on showing you something really important before we run out of time. I told you that I could totally do this all day with these things. Okay, so come back to me if you are not there anymore. Go ahead, leave that slideshow. I mean, leave that spreadsheet open. You can always go back to it. But I do want to, before we sign off, get to show you Chrome extensions. So when I did that year-long training I was talking about, Chrome extensions was a whole day-long training, and even they said we can't teach you everything about extensions in a day. So you guys are getting a 5-minute whirlwind, but please make sure you check these out. So Chrome extensions are kind of like apps for Google Chrome that can be used with anything you do on Google Chrome. So that's a lot. And they're available in the Chrome Web Store. And the nice thing about them is if your students download them and put them onto their Chrome, all they have to do is sign into Google, and these apps will show up on any computer they use. So they can put them on their classroom computer, and then it will be on their home computer. They show up on the top right corner of your Google, um, of your window when you have Google Chrome open. So and if you just click on that little puzzle piece up at the top right, as you see that I did, it'll give you a list of them and show which ones you have pinned or which ones you have on. And if you navigate to let me go back. If you navigate to manage extensions, as it shows in the bottom of this list here, you're going to be able to see all yours. And this is just a screenshot of some of the ones that I've used. And you're going to see, oh, she clearly has executive function issues because I have website blockers and I have site blockers and I have timers, a lot of different things. Um, we have students who have issues with being able to even access on, they don't have internet at home, and so they could enable Google Docs offline. There's a lot of different goodies that I have on there. And so one of the things that they taught us when I was in my training is don't look for specific Google Chrome extensions. We're not looking for specific extensions because there's millions, and they change, maybe not millions, but hundreds of thousands at least. And they change all the time. New ones come, old ones fold. So what you should be looking at is functions. What do you want it to do? So that's how I've organized it. So it's organized the web store by functions. So here I'm looking under productivity. I have some various communications extensions that I could add to my Chrome. And then anytime I'm using Chrome, I have these abilities. So let's look at some specific ones I saw that I liked. So this is a DeepL Translate I could put on there to have an AI translator on any website I'm on. ScreenPal, we can do screen recordings. I mean, imagine if you could do a screen recording of instructions for a digital assignment for your students and then be able to post that. And so any student who got lost could just watch the screen recording of how to, we have very different levels of digital literacy in our classroom. And there's a note taker as well. Again, our students struggle with taking notes. This is a flyby again, guys. But there's also lovely extensions in the area of education. So this one will record my voice notes and turn my text into speech. Of course, we all know about Google Translate. Speechify. Oh, I'm going to stop here with Speechify. So Speechify does text to speech, but if your students like it, there's a pay version that's not very expensive and it does a human voice. I love it. I'm an author and I had Snoop Dogg. I picked Snoop Dogg's voice. Read my entire book back to me to edit it. It was a really good tool for me. Oh, this one's for you guys. AI teaching assistant. Oh, here's another one, Open Dyslexic. So this, I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's a font that they've done research on that helps dyslexics, students with dyslexia, understand more of what they read and struggle less with their dyslexia. You can download that font. You can get get a Chrome extension that will translate every web page into that font. Okay, what else? Other areas to check out would be tools. A lot of different tools like Google Dictionary, lovely on every website. Um, I think I'll skip that one. Workflow and planning. This is a huge one for your students. So check out those. There's, again, guys, there's thousands. So what I'm encouraging you to do is look by function. So we have scribing. Oh, there's a big one for students with executive function issues. How much time do you spend in your classroom trying to help students to remember their passwords? Where's that piece of paper? We wrote it all down for you. Yeah, teacher, help your students get a password manager to manage their passwords. That can be great. Yeah, web clippers help you to take notes. This is just some screenshots that I found of wonderful things that I would check out further. But I'll stop here. This is the last one I'll go to. Accessibility. So accessibility is a huge one, and this is the one that I probably use with the most students. So when I talk accessibility, that's that idea of being able to access the information. So this is where we look at text to speech, speech to text, having a line across the screen, highlighting, changing the color of the screen, or how much words is on the screen on a line. There's a lot you can do, and I just kind of download a few and let my students play around until they know how they like their screen for doing online reading. All right, you guys. Wow. I can't believe how fast that went, but we are just about out of time. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to the feedback screen here. They're going to put up a poll for you to give your feedback about this presentation. I'd appreciate it. But I also am going to pull up my chat. So if you have any questions, I'd love to field them. I know we did such a huge bird's eye view. I really, really hope you'll go back and check out one or two of the new things that you learned about today and see how you can incorporate them into your classroom. I also hope you'll go back to that um, Google sheet that we worked on together and continue to fill that out so you guys can all collaborate. That's going to remain open to you for forever. And if you guys can collaborate on uses, I find that so useful. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So let's talk about the next webinar. So just thank you guys all for coming today. It was good fun. Sorry about my voice and my coughing, but I hope you understood me. I want to encourage you to register for IPDA's next webinar, which is going to be a Wednesday webinar. It's on June 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern, and the topic is Promising Practices for Dual Enrollment ESOL to GED. All right, you guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you.